And for the month of November, I decided to interview really movers and shakers and people that have really inspired me. And one of those is sitting here with me today, Leigh Joy. Leigh Joy is a high profile keynote speaker, a coach, and a consultant who dares to speak up and speak out on topics that touch all of our lives and yet are often still related to the darkest causes of society and personal blame. Leigh's infectious energy and deep commitment to the upliftment of each and every one of us ensures a highly engaged and transformed audience ready to step up and step into their own personal power. Leigh, it's so lovely to have you. Thank you for joining us. You are the self care queen, so it's nice to have you here.
Thank you, Yoko. It's such a pleasure to be with you and especially on your birthday. Happy birthday. I feel very blessed. I know that it would be nice if we were sitting and having a piece of cake together in person. But
Cheers.
yes, I've got some coffee and some water. Cheers,
Cheers.
my friend, to a beautiful year ahead. And I'm so glad that you're in my life and I'm so glad that you were born. God bless you.
Thank you so much. So we're talking about some deep topics today because for the first few weeks we were really talking about. I was feeling, I always get depressed. On the 1st of October, Checkers and Pick and Pay and Woolworths had already put up their Christmas decorations. And then, I mean, it's only my birthday today, the 24th of November. Then I haven't even had my birthday yet. So I was looking at all of these, glittery lights and decor, and I was like, I don't feel like working anymore. I just feel like going on holiday. And I was like, I need to get myself out of this negative rut and like have a last bit of mojo for the year. And what I've seen with so many business owners is people are trying to have like that last bit push. I mean, we're seeing a lot of Black Friday happening right now, but so many of the people have missed out so much on business. They can't stop working right now. They need to have that final push for the year. What are your thoughts on that, Leigh?
I'm so glad you asked me because I've been sitting and thinking about, the finishing strong. And there's something that irritates me about finishing strong. And I went and meditated and prayed about it and really sat with it for the last couple of weeks. And I realized what it is that for me, especially with regards to burnout and self-care, it's not about finishing strong, it's about finishing gentle. So we're still going to finish. We're still going to do what needs to get done, but we're not going to hard push ourselves. We're going to finish from a gentle space of self-compassion. We're going to, Q4 is going to be a good quarter, and we're going to do it with gentleness.
I love that. I love that. And last week, Thursday, we were having our PSA, Professional Speakers Association Joburg meeting, and Nikki Bush said something interesting, and she said, we're not finding ourselves at the beginning of COVID. We're not finding ourselves at the end. We're probably finding ourselves in the middle. And it's probably going to still be a bit of a marathon. But if you're thinking of running a marathon, you don't immediately, like the comrades, or that's like an ultra marathon, you don't every day run the super long course. You need to kind of like build up the speed, build up the muscle, doing shorter runs. And that's what I just also thought of with you is businesses don't just set goals for December, and personal people as well. We are going into next year. We don't want to just set goals on the 31st of December. We're constantly growing and developing ourselves. So I would say the race in life, how do we make sure that we do it more gently, as you say, so that you don't have burnout?
So if we look at the end of the year, what I like to do now, November, December, is have a look at my goals for next year. Also have a look at my goals for this year. What did I achieve? What didn't I achieve? And so if I'm looking, I've got a specific sheet that I've questionnaire that I've devised. So if anybody online would like that, they can email it me at Leigh at leigjoy.co.za, and I'll send you the reflection sheet. And it's just a two-page A4. You can have it for free. I'm not going to charge anybody
We'll
anything.
put the link below afterwards.
Okay, awesome.
Cool.
So my clients normally go, and myself, I also practice it. So I answer all the questions, and it's kind of like, what did I achieve this year? What did I wish I had achieved? The things that I haven't achieved, would I put that over to next year, or is it not a relevant goal to meet? And so for me, the end of the year, obviously there's some things that I'm wrapping up. There are projects that I'm wrapping up, like the Self-Care Diaries, wrapping that up for this year. My Me 2.0 podcast with Nick Smith, we're wrapping that up for this year, and then seeing my clients in between. So having a look at so it's a reflection time for me, a wrapping up and a reflection time. And then I'll think about my goals also for next year. And then I just go on holiday and I just allow all of that to disseminate and just to distill is the word I'm looking for in my brain, and to see, to celebrate what I did get right this year. It's not about pushing. I used to be all about pushing. And if there's anything that COVID has taught me, that pushing's not where it's at. It's not where it's at. It's about stamina, and yes, it's about gentleness, and yes, it's about, beautiful word, uithou vermoë, determination. Yeah, I love it's one of my favorite Afrikaans words. Is determination. And yes, it's all about that, but it's about having self-compassion and being gentle.
Brilliant. So you're really reflecting. I loved what you were saying when you were saying, was the goal realistic or not? How do you determine that?
It's only afterwards that I look back on this year. Like there are a couple of projects that I got off the ground during COVID, and there were two that I didn't do this year. The one was write a book, and the other one was get my online membership site up and running. So I did a lot of the videos for the membership site, but I just looked at it and I thought, do I have to get it up this year? Am I going to be marketing it in December? No. So no, I don't need to get it up and running this year. And my book, I just don't have it in me. I just don't have it in me right now to write the book. And I don't want to just go write a book for the sake of writing a book. So.
And that's being gentle, right? That's being gentle and allowing yourself to revisit that goal and actually shifting it to a different time zone. It doesn't mean that you are completely taking it off the list. You are just not forcing and cramming and pushing it into right now where you could have burnouts eventually.
Exactly.
I wanted to ask you, with the kind of clients that you've worked with, the other day you were speaking to 100 to 200 CEOs. I don't know if you got any feedback from them, but how have they been doing? What have they been struggling with self-care wise these past few months?
So the big corporates that I've been speaking to, their biggest concern is keeping people's jobs. So they have not wanted to do wellness programs at this stage. They realize how vital it is to be doing wellness programs, especially around self-care and mental health. But their budgets, they've been diverting their budgets mainly towards salaries. So I've said to them, guys, that's a really noble choice to make, but it's also a very tough one, because you can keep staff, but if you're not looking after them psychiatrically and emotionally and mentally, then next year we're going to sit with a very big problem. But when people are in crisis mode, which is what's happening at the moment, people are in crisis mode and in survival mode. There's just a buyers' confidence is reduced. People don't hold on to money, the corporates or even personal, individuals. So I think that we're going to have a very, very big problem next year with people's mental health. I think that it's really going to come to the fore, the stress of what we've been through this year. We're already seeing, the suicide rates have climbed significantly
Sure.
this year. There were 2 girls that committed suicide last week in Paarl.
So
high school
sorry.
girls at
Mm,
two different schools. So it's, mental health is definitely getting there's a bigger awareness around it. I read an article that in the UK, Britain has just nominated a 45 billion or 52 billion pound budget to mental health. I don't know for what period that
sure.
is. Um, and so it's definitely becoming something. I mean, the Royals have done amazing work with Oprah to speak about mental health and the importance of mental health, and self care is really what is to prevent people from having to have from falling out mentally. So a lot of people think, Yoka, that self-care is bubble baths and going for a run, and it is part of self-care, but that's not the crux of self-care. Self-care is physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, social, professional self-care. So it's a there's a holistic look at where we're at. And I've got two different clients. One is people that are trying to prevent burnout. So they've got a self care practice in place so that buoys them and keeps them strong, and they're able to move through difficult experiences, not necessarily easier, but better than if they didn't have a self care practice. And then there are those that have been through burnout, and we're needing to recover them, helping to recover them. So there's one is an educational and the other one is like clinical. So I much prefer to be in the preventative camp. That's where I
So,
want to.
yeah, no, definitely. But I wanted to ask you, if there are people who are listening out there, a lot of people might not even know what burnout would look like. So could you maybe just describe what could some of the symptoms be? What would you be experiencing or noticing in your friends, and what would your recommendation be for them if they're starting to develop these symptoms?
So one of the telltale signs of burnout is like we cut off emotionally. Another word for it is compassion fatigue. So it is we're not able to be empathetic with other people. Like other people's experiences become not important to us. So we almost cut off. It's a way of protecting ourselves. So that's the emotional burnout. Um, so
So
dumb down,
that's
shut off.
so that could be like a manager where his staff is going through really traumatic events and he doesn't register at all that they need time off or they need to go take their sick child to the doctor. It's just like not tuned in to them, hey?
Completely
Okay.
shut. And it's different from how they used to be. So, Yoka, if you had a narcissistic
Okay.
manager that didn't care really about your feelings beforehand, I mean, he might have been burnt out then already, but it's a marked difference in their behavior. If you go to them and say to them, they're like, I'm really struggling, they'll be like, oh, I can't deal with that now. So a marked inability to be able to deal with other people's emotional problems. The second is exhaustion,
I also wanted
absolute
to ask
chronic
sleep.
fatigue. Yeah, chronic
Mm.
fatigue. And chronic fatigue looks like even if you get 8 hours sleep, you wake up exhausted. It's just a mental and physical and emotional exhaustion. It's and it doesn't matter. You can sleep at night, you can sleep in the afternoon. It doesn't let up. um so dumbed down emotionally, physically, I'm not going to swear, exhausted. um I think also if one is a spiritual person, it's spiritual disconnection, so disconnected from that that is sacred to them. uh Another sign of burnout is isolation. They don't want to spend time with other people. Uh, so
So can I
burnout,
ask you? Yeah. No, sorry.
so burnout and depression, like depression would form part of burnout.
Okay. So if a person's now almost like going down that path and they don't sort out their burnout or they don't start healing themselves in the process, what can happen?
Yeah,
What is the
burnout's not
impact?
fun.
What is the
Yeah.
impact on a business also? Because like you're saying at the moment, corporates are not investing into this. So should employees perhaps want to actually like look after themselves and realize that they will rather do these practices even if their own companies are not willing to do that.
Yeah, I mean the if one is chronically burnt out, you're looking at being off work for a period of 3 to 6 months.
Sure.
And one would probably need to be institutionalized for at least a month, um, to be medicated, to get sleep therapy, and to
Mm.
learn the self-care tips and tools and techniques, some of which I share. So the fallout on a business, I mean, they're still having to pay those salaries because you're not, it's illegal to fire somebody because they're struggling emotionally or mentally. I mean, there is is a TERS. There would be a TERS payout. There would be the company would be able to call on a TERS payout to help them with that payment. But still, they're sitting with a person that they've trained and that holds a position within the organization that can no longer fill that role for 3 to 6 months. They have to bring in somebody else that could also be burnt out, could also be stressed because of COVID. How do they know? Put them into that position. It's very expensive to retrain staff. I mean, it's more expensive to lose staff for whatever reason than it is to train and keep staff healthy.
I was actually talking to one of my coaching clients the other day, and she said to me in a shocking way that at her company they are having a freeze on jobs, which means that in her department, so many people have left, and they just have to do everyone else's jobs. And she just said she just realized that she needs to get her business up and running so that she can start looking after herself at the same time, or starting to say no. So I was looking, Leigh, at your keynote topics, and I quite love the one where you said, "Don't overstep my boundaries." No is a full sentence. How important is boundaries for you, and what advice do you have on setting boundaries?
I had such a fabulous chat with her. She Says at Cape Town. It's the organization that runs the for the public relations, marketing, and advertising women industry. And their Cape Town branch had a panel discussion last week, and I was on one of the panelists. And one of the discussions was around boundaries. And I think some of the most profound work I do in my keynotes and my training, corporate training, as well as my one-to-one clients, is teaching people how to set boundaries. And often people think boundaries is about setting, I need to set a boundary with my husband, or I need to set a boundary with my child, or I need to set a boundary with my boss or colleague. But very few people understand that boundaries actually start with setting it with ourselves. So, say for argument's sake, I need to set a boundary with my boss, saying, "I know you've got a freeze on the jobs within our organization. I know that I'm carrying 4 people's positions, but it's it's not acceptable. You're not paying me 4 times the salary, number one. And number two, it's impossible for one person to do 4 people's jobs, because originally you had 4 people doing the job. But the boundary needs to be set with the person, with me first. I need to go and say, right, I'm not doing this job. I'm not prepared to put myself at this kind of risk emotionally, mentally, and psychiatrically and physically. And I might set that boundary once with my boss, but I need to continue to set that boundary with myself. So
I love that.
boundaries is so vital. I mean, it's so vital to be able to understand how important it is to protect ourselves.
How important do you feel boundaries are when we negotiate contracts with clients? Because I want to quickly just throw in an example. I've recently seen people that work with people in different time zones. And if those people then have the expectation that you're going to work in their time period, then you will never sleep. And I'm seeing this happening with a company, and some of the people are able to set clear boundaries. But the moment the other South African branches will then just escalate it, and then they're expecting people to work throughout the night, not be paid overtime, but ultimately they're going to lose the staff. So, how important is it to negotiate that from the beginning when you're actually doing the proposal and the contract and to continue doing it?
Yeah, I mean, it makes me sad that the organization doesn't think of that upfront, that that even needs to be set from, that boundary needs to be set from an employee point of view. I mean, that's just staggering, and abusive. As far as I'm concerned, that's corporate abuse. That's bullying, and
It is. It
you know,
is. Yeah.
I think that how I teach my clients is that first impressions aren't always correct, but if a
Mm,
company or a person, an individual treats you with disrespect upfront, and you set a boundary and they violate that boundary, they're going to continue to violate that boundary. So no matter how many times you set that boundary with a corporate, they're going to violate it. So the boundary that I was talking about setting with yourself is then to say, actually, I'm not going to tolerate this, because they might violate the boundary, but if I enable them and I continue to work with them without pay, I violated my own boundary. And that's
definitely.
where we come into a place of self-empowerment and taking responsibility for our own lives and not being in victim.
So, would you say setting up the boundary is actually deciding for yourself what am I okay with? What am I not okay with? How do I want to be treated? Like what is the win win in terms of a working relationship with me? Because even for entrepreneurs, you need to decide that. You need to put it in your terms and conditions if you want a upfront deposit or in whatever way you need to be paid.
Yes, I think that we teach people how to treat us.
I love
That's
that.
that's it's such a and I think that was Dr. Phil that said that many years ago. I learned that from him, and yeah, it, it's so important to know our own value and our own worth. And so often people think, oh, if I set a boundary, I'm not going to get the job, or I will get fired, or but if your boundary is valid and reasonable, they've got no grounds to fire you. And actually, in my opinion, corporates, managers, and bosses actually respect people for having boundaries.
Definitely. Definitely.
They're going to try
I
their luck, right? Okay. In the
mm,
beginning, they're going to try their luck because they don't know what your boundary is. So if we set a boundary up front, then they're like, oh, okay, that's that person's boundary.
I've seen in examples of my own life with people that are very new to the job market, they're graduates. They have very, very few boundaries. They are just so grateful to work. They work all hours of the day, all hours of the night, have no personal life. And then only when people almost like get to a level of they care enough about themselves and they love themselves enough to be like, I'm also worth looking after myself, do they start setting up boundaries? But if they've set that precedent, that's what's going to be expected. So, like you
Mm.
say, you're teaching them how to treat you. So perhaps people should actually start doing it quicker. Just as a last question, I wanted to ask you, I read a fascinating article you recently wrote for speakers because you are a keynote speaker yourself. I know you're represented by Speakers Inc. in Cape Town, and you wrote about what do people need to do before, during, and after an event. And it was quite interesting for me. You specifically said, how do we deal with the blues after an event? Because what I thought of is so often, so besides people that are speakers, I mean, most people in their business career would have certain goals or certain things that they're really looking forward to, and they could also hit that blue once that big thing or that big event has now happened. So, what would your advice be after a big event, after hitting a big goal? How should people take care of themselves?
So
What do
I
you
asked
do?
what do I do? So I take the day off. like that's the speech that I recently did, which was so the keynote was so amazing to go and speak at the Success Academy in Midrand,
Brilliant.
for their that they got they were about 100 people in the room, and after I spoke early in the morning. So if anybody knows me, that was like really
Oh,
interesting because I sleep late. So to be at the venue by 6:45 was number one, firstly, very interesting.
ah,
But in the afternoon, I just really chilled because I think, my keynotes are very personal. I share a lot of personal stories. So there is that vulnerability blues that I feel afterwards. And a couple of really like great speakers gave some great advice to me for in writing that article. The one was from Carl Schultz, where he said, "Go and celebrate. Go and have a lunch, have a dinner, and really go and celebrate that
that's
you've
awesome.
you've done this event." Graham Codrington suggested that one understand how each of us manage our energies differently. So I think he likes to go for a run afterwards, actually, because that
Oh,
energizes him. And then Lewis Wagner said that she drinks a big glass of wine. So for those that drink, I think that'd also be a great, unless you're going to have it at 8 in the morning. I'm not sure that's such a good idea.
no, not good.
um, so it's really about understanding your own energy levels and how to manage them, and to know that there is going to be a dip afterwards, and that is completely natural and completely normal. I think in the beginning I was quite shocked how that happened. I was like, oh gosh, does that mean that my keynote was rubbish, that I'm left with this down feeling? I mean, immediately after I walk off stage, I'm usually buzzy. Um, Only an hour or two later, I hit a bit of a dip. So it was really interesting to another speaker was Louise Mowbray, and she also said that she feels like that after her speeches, and she just needs to go and just chill, meditate, just be quiet with herself. So I've used all of those techniques. Another technique which could be quite fun is Gareth Hawkey, one of my clients. He's the CEO of Red Panda, and he likes the Rocky song "Eye of the Tiger." So I also did that. Like I came back and I put that on full blast, and I pretended I was Rocky. So yeah, it's just really taking care of oneself, and knowing that we're allowed to do that, giving ourselves
Brilliant.
permission to do that.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Any last tip that you want to give the audience that they can be more gentle to themselves at the end of this year?
Great question. Thank you, Yoko. I think that people, you're not weak or stupid or not worthy or not valuable if you're feeling tired and this year has felt like too much. It's completely normal. It's completely normal that you're feeling tired, wrung out, and if there's a tip that I could give you and you can't afford to come and see me, then please go and have a look at the Self-Care Diaries on YouTube. There's lots of videos there. I've got stacks of blogs on my website. And we've got the Campfire Conversations on the 5th of December coming up, which is a free event online. Just get hold of me and I'll send you the link. But just look at ways in which you can self-care, because I really do believe that it's our responsibility to take care of ourselves. I don't believe we're islands. I believe that we live in fellowship and communion with other people, but it is our responsibility to be able to take care of ourselves and to teach people how to treat us. And then mostly not to forget to lean into the sacred, because after all, we're not alone.
It's so beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'll make sure that we pop all of our links into this YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook afterwards, so that if people want to reach out for Leigh for speaking, she has quite a few topics, and for coaching, they can reach out to you directly. Thank you so much, Leigh, and have a wonderful day.
Such a pleasure. Thank you for